Services. And your presenters today are Nikki Brown, Assistant Director of Academic Advising and Career Exploration, and Rachel Dolacek, Instructor of Business Education.
Well, good morning. Like Kanye said, my name is Nikki. I'm the Assistant Director in the Advising Center. And what I do is I essentially advise and work with exploratory students, so mostly freshmen and sophomores. And then Rachel,
Yes. So I'm an instructor over at the College of Business in business communication, but I am new to that role. Previously have been working in an advising and adjunct instructor position for the last 10 years. So we're very excited today to talk to you about building relationships and with your professors and advisors and why we believe that is important to your job search process and beyond. So we wanted to start with telling you about job skills and people skills. Emily Post, the Etiquette Advantage of Business, would tell you that both are required to be successful in the job search and your job. So we require both job skills and people skills. We believe that aside from your GPA, building a positive relationship with your advisor and with faculty can be one of the most essential steps in you getting the job.
and part of the reason that comes into play is typically your faculty and your advisors are the people that you're going to for references when you're trying to secure jobs, when you're starting to look for internships and practicums. And that's not something that, from our experience, that we've always seen students necessarily navigate in a way that's most beneficial to them, because as a freshman, often you don't think about the importance of those relationships when it comes to junior and senior year. So hopefully what we'll be able to give you is just some tips and things you can put into practice pretty quickly to be able to help you essentially with that branding presence that you have with your faculty and advisors face to face, as well as working on that social branding that Casey talked a little bit about this morning. So we're going to do a little bit of participation here, but with the picture that we've showed right here, how would you describe that student? Tired.
Uninvolved.
Uninvolved? Just got out of bed? So what kind of things do you think this student aspires to do?
Attend class.
Attend class. Okay. Anything else?
Be comfortable.
Be comfortable?
Watch Netflix.
Watch Netflix. Okay. What about this student? How would you describe that student? Productive?
Instant famous.
What was that?
Instant famous.
He said I bet she has a lot of followers on Instagram.
Okay. What do you think she aspires to do? To do well. Okay. The presence just from those two pictures, if you think about the way you describe the first girl versus the second girl, that's the same impression you're giving to both your faculty and your advisors when you walk in the room. Sometimes we don't think about when we go to class and want to be comfortable and just roll out of bed and maybe you're running a little bit late, what that projects to our faculty as well as our advisors. And that makes a huge difference when you go to them early in your career as to what they're able to say about you. Girl number one, I probably would describe in a very similar way to you, that she rolled out of bed and kind of looks really comfortable and doesn't necessarily look real motivated to be able to accomplish her goals. Where girl number two, I probably have some really good verb choices to be able to pick from when trying to make that recommendation.
And we want to be very clear that girl number two up here, professional and put together, doesn't always have to be perfect. When we talk about business professional and the job search process, know that this can be considered professional as well, just in a sense that you are more prepared for the day than girl number one. And so we talk a lot about what that looks like, what business professional, business casual, what that looks like in the job search process. It's okay to be put together like girl number two and have a much different presence and image that you are projecting to people. You don't always have to be business professional. I think Cassie talked about that a little bit this this morning in the keynote speech where she said, it might depend what you are doing, where you're going, what that looks like for you, and what's required for that typical day, that position, that job.
Right. Yoga pants can look put together. She proves that. But putting on jeans and a shirt that maybe isn't as wrinkled makes a huge difference than grabbing the one that's been rolled up in a ball from in the corner of your bedroom for the last 2 weeks. So being able to recognize that and realize that impression makes a huge difference in what your faculty and advisors are able to say about you when they're writing those letters of recommendation. So from a tie-in, because I'm going to assume this week you're going to hear a lot about the National Association of Colleges and Employers and their career readiness skills. The one that really plays in the most with our presentation here is really that professionalism and work ethic. Because your work ethic, while yes, it is demonstrated in your transcript, what kind of grades you're capable of getting, but that professionalism aspect comes into play really in how you present yourself to the different people on campus. And you have to think about that really from yourself being a billboard and what you're wearing on campus and the way that you arrive to appointments, the way you show up in classes makes a huge difference. So the things it talks about on here is just that personal accountability, what your work habits look like, the ability to be able to be punctual. While all of us run late at times, is how do you handle the situation when you're not there on time? It's having that appointment with your advisor or faculty member to be able to talk about something and life pops up that you're running late or you can't make that appointment, but at least following up with them to go, hey, I apologize for the fact that I wasn't able to be there. Here's what happened. Is there any way to be able to schedule another appointment with you to address what I missed? And taking that responsibility for the things that do happen in life and how you can make that a professional or handle that in a professional manner versus just that, oh, well, everybody misses stuff sometimes, so I'm just not going to worry about it and I'll try to get in later on.
And we wanted to point out too, professional work image, we talk about that a lot from the perspective of what does that look like on social media. We want you to think beyond social media, what your presence looks like when you're interacting with faculty, when you're interacting with your advisor, and with other staff members here on campus, and how you can work on that now.
And that essentially takes you into the quick tips that we have.
And these are recommendations just from what we have seen in our years in higher education and working with students, what we would recommend that you work on now. What can you do in the classroom, outside of the classroom, but while you're a student at Fort Hays State? So when it comes to written communication, something we see quite often is email. What's appropriate in email? Adding your name when you're emailing someone. Don't just assume that we are going to be able to recognize you from your email address. Actually put your name on the bottom of the email. Have a subject line that is appropriate. Have an email address that is appropriate.
CandyPrincess@yahoo.com does not ring very well with your faculty. And doesn't really give you that seriousness or that professionalism that's there. So making sure that with email, you're using your Fort Hays email as much as you possibly can. But most of you, how many of you are checking your email on your phone? That's your primary means, okay? Every cell phone has the capability when you go in to be able to set up a signature. Take the time to go in and set up your signature so that every response doesn't say sent from iPhone, that it actually says your name. It has your contact information there. It's very easy when we do everything on our phone to simply reply to everyone the same way, and you've got to learn to break that habit because your phone is not going away, and we're not telling you that's not the best way to be able to stay in touch, but it's how to use it professionally. Realize that texting and text language is not what you want to use in your email responses on your phone. Proper grammar, proper capitalization is probably my biggest pet peeve because the word I is always capitalized. And when we type it on our phone, that doesn't always happen. So taking the time to read what you actually type and think about who your audience is. Because if it's going to one of your friends, that's a completely different story. But when you're addressing a faculty member, you're addressing an advisor, you're addressing someone that you one day want to go to and ask for a professional reference, you need to present yourself in the manner in which you want them to talk about you in. So again, it kind of goes back to what Cassie talked about this morning. You think about those 10 words you want people to use when they describe you. Think of that with your faculty and your advisors. Because when they write that letter of recommendation, what do you want them to say about you? What do you want them to be able to speak to? And most of the time, it's things that you can address by simply taking the time to write a proper email to them.
Starting the email with "hey" is not appropriate. So finding another way, if you don't know, should I say doctor, should I say, you can improvise, you can look at the website, you can do some research for most of those cases, but you can start off with something like "good morning," or in most of the cases, if you are talking with a faculty member, saying "Professor Brown," something like that. If you're unsure, go with that, don't go with "hey." Scheduling a meeting. So we've noticed that this is something, a lot of the impromptu conversations catch you in the hallway, catch you in your office, even outside of office hours. Again, think about the image that you're projecting to the faculty member and your advisor. Even if they don't require a meeting, a scheduled meeting time, schedule it. They will think so much more of you for saying, "Hey, I'm going to stop by at 11 o'clock today. Would you be available at that time?" They will remember that, be able to write that reference for you and include some of those skills that employers are looking for in their reference letter.
Those meetings also give you that time to be able to build a little bit of a better relationship with those individuals. I can tell you numerous times where I've had students walk in my office, they're like, "Well, I met with you once, can you write me this letter of recommendation for this?" And I'm like, "I met you once and we talked for 5 minutes. I know very little about you to be able to actually write a letter that's going to be beneficial to you." So scheduling those meetings beyond, I just need to come and review my schedule, or I need to talk about my plan as far as classes. Have those conversations about your full educational plan. What internships do you want to take? Where do you really want to go? Because that's how they can then better assist you in being able to actually acquire those goals. Where a quick 5-minute conversation in the hall, hopefully they remember who you are, but faculty advisors see a lot of students. And while most of us do a pretty good job, still a quick in the hallway conversation, we might recognize but not remember the full story to be able to connect the dots later on down the road. That meeting gives you that opportunity to help them connect the dots and really know who you are, not just what your face looks like.
Our next point of being prepared, this isn't something that you haven't heard previously. I'm sure you've heard this before. Be prepared for class, obviously, but taking that one step further, being prepared for those meetings, being prepared, when you're going into someone's office to talk to them and you schedule the meeting, come in with questions, come in with a plan. How do you think this meeting's going to go? And so it'll be more effective more effective use of your time and the faculty member and the advisor if you do that, if you have a plan and are prepared for those meetings.
And that'll help you and translate into other work skills as well, as far as running meetings and essentially kind of learning how to set that agenda of, this is what I want to know. These are the things that I believe are important to me to be able to accomplish my goals. I explain that to a lot of my students because often they're going and trying to get information from advisors about what their educational options are. And as professionals, all of us know what we think you need to know, and we will tell you what we think you need to know, but that might not be specifically what you need to know to be able to move forward. So don't make it our job to be able to tell you what you know. Help us figure out, how do we get you that step further to be able to apply the information and really move forward.
And I think we've mentioned dress already, but again, the key point we want you to take away is professional and perfect. Don't think that business professional always is the perfect route to go. Girl number 2, perfect example. So we really believe if you practice these skills in and outside of the FHSU classroom, you are likely to have a positive reference from a faculty member or your advisor. Again, that's important. You need that reference for beyond the job search process. Think of it for now. Do you need a reference for a scholarship? Probably so. Who would you go to? They may be very specific. We want an academic reference. When you're applying for a job, they may want an academic reference. Graduate school, academic reference. And so all of these things will come back in play for you, either in the job search process or now scholarships, graduate school in the near future.
And remember, those references should be able to speak beyond the GPA. When you're applying for jobs, your screen transcript speaks to your knowledge base. They're going to be able to see you're an AB student or you're a C average student and make decisions about your ability to learn in that manner. Your resume says all the things you do really well. What they're looking for in that reference is, what did you do with this particular person? Not just say you were going to do, but what did you actually follow through on that they can speak really well to? So think about those things in different capacities, because your reference letter is not a regurgitation of your transcript or your resume. It is that personal information. What can someone else say about you? How can they use those 10 verbs you want people to use to describe you to help you move forward in your job search?
And what we found is those verbs will very much align with job skills that you'll be required to have when you get the job. So your employer will have expectations from you that not when you start the job they'll expect you to learn, but on day one, when you walk in the door, they will expect you to be on time. They will expect you to have the ability to build relationships with other people, either in their organization or outside of their organization, depending on where you're at. You may have a very interactive role with outside of their organization. Be flexible, be open-minded, and be willing to make changes. That's something your employer will expect of you day one. So Emily Post says it best. Your job skills, so what we are working on probably inside the classroom, your job skills, they'll get you in the door. But your people skills, they will get you the assignment.
So remember, just use this as your practice ground. That's what college is meant for, is use it as your practice. Your interaction with faculty and staff should be your practice of how you're going to interact with your boss and your coworkers in the real world. And if you can master it here, you'll be able to go that much further once you're in the place you want to be. So, questions? Yes?
On meetings with advisors, with faculty, what have you, I know everybody's busy, students and faculty. So if you go to see your advisor and you want, like I went and saw mine, it was the first one I had, and it had changed advisors because I was a virtual student and now I'm on campus. And I just kind of felt like the meeting was rushed. People were standing outside of her door that wanted to talk to her. And I was having a hard time keeping, I think, the advisor focused on my concerns and my questions, because I always felt like she was, looking around. So how do you, if you know you want more time, when you send an email, do you just request an extended appointment? Or?
I would, because advisors, and especially depending on who the advisor is and what their caseload looks like in the time of year in which we're looking, because pre-enrollment is always that much busier. I would say when you schedule that appointment, tell them the things you want to address and that you would like to have more than just the 15 minutes. That's the norm. If you ask for that time, I would say come prepared to be in there for that long. Don't come or ask for a 30-minute meeting and go, oh, I just have this one question kind of thing. But if you know you've got an agenda and certain questions you want to address, give them that heads up that here's some things I would really like to discuss, and I feel like a 30-minute appointment would really allow us the time to really dive into that. When's the best time to be able to get that meeting with you?
And your advisor may tell you, hey, I would really like you to come back. So if they do have another scheduled appointment, let's say you go beyond the 30 minutes that you've allotted for that time, I've asked students to come back. Could you come back later today, later this week, you know, this is a great conversation. We'd like to finish this conversation. So you might be invited back at that point, or if you get to that point where the meeting has to end because there are people waiting outside the door, you can ask for that too. You can say, I still have these couple of questions. When is a good time for me to schedule to come back, and can we schedule a half-hour appointment?
Great question. Any others?
Yeah, I noticed it's one of my personal pet peeves, but you keep using the word girl. And I don't see any girls here, I see women.
I apologize.
And I just attended Cassie's Women in the Workplace, and she made the point of how women are judged on their clothing much more than men are, and you only had women up there. And so I would call out to you and every professor, quit using the word girl. We're women, and we're looking for jobs, or, you know, this is a career event. So please use the word women, and we're our own worst enemies. We as women ourselves, we want that respect in the workplace, and yet we behave or dress or use the vocabulary. We use the word girls, and we shouldn't. We should be saying women and other things.
Thank you.
That's a
Thank
very
you for
valid
pointing
point.
that
Yes.
out. We will certainly keep that in the future. I agree. That was one of my takeaways from her presentation as well this morning. If you noticed, did you go to her second? Yes, you were in her second one as well. She used 2 examples of moments in her life when she really felt like the standard was different. And I asked her after the session, who were those people that pointed out to you that you didn't meet the expectation? You know, I think one of them, they asked her to put on a jacket. The other one, she had something that was somewhat, she thought was good, a professional outfit, but they said she didn't fit the bill. They were women. And so I agree, we are our own worst enemies, and how to move forward with that, I think, is addressing. So I appreciate you pointing that out. Any other questions? Yes.
Hi, everybody. I'm an advisor, and I just want to say thank you to both of you for presenting on this today. This is really important. From an advisor perspective, I can tell you I believe it's really important. I do want to say, you know, if you think a professor, you may not ask a professor for a letter of reference. They are still important because we know people, and sometimes prospective employers just call us and say, hey, do you know this student? What do you think? And even though we're not listed as a reference on someone's resume. So I would just encourage you to practice what you have learned here today. I think it's really, really important. And we advisors would love to talk to you. So come talk to us and see us and do all the things that Nikki and Rachel have said.
Okay, well, I think our time for this session has ended. We have a prize, a giveaway. I think this is a great short reference to moving from campus to corporate. So when you're getting ready to do that, this might be a good guide to reflect back on.
Change the ticket. Get a ticket? Oh.
Oh, look at his shoes. Oh gosh, how did I get those?
Please make sure you fill out your evaluations and you can leave them on the table. All right, class 3784.
Ooh.